Before we can discuss Deathrone, we must first start at the beginning, with Cain, the first murderer, son of Adam and Eve. After killing his brother Abel, Cain was cursed by Yahweh to wander the earth forever, marked so that no one could kill him. Instead of repenting, he embraced the curse. He became a being of immense power, mastering dark sorcery over the millennia. He eventually made his way to the Americas, lived among the Aztecs, and took the name Dark Mirage. It was under this name that he and Hermal Zudin oversaw the brutal human sacrifice rituals. When the rebel warrior Miqui was sacrificed and refused to die, Dark Mirage watched in fascination as the Green Angel pulled him into hell. Mirage kept Miqui's still-beating heart as a trophy, while giving Hermal a convincing fake one. For centuries afterward, Dark Mirage retreated into deep meditation in a remote cave, self-mutilating and growing ever more powerful, removing his eyelids, nose, ears, and fingers just to regrow them and do it again and again in his quest for ultimate mastery. He did not stay in that cave forever. In 1942, during the height of World War II, Dark Mirage emerged from his long seclusion, drawn by the massive amounts of death and chaos unfolding across the world. He made his way to Germany and became a shadowy advisor to Adolf Hitler, whispering occult knowledge and fueling the Führer's delusions of a master race and thousand-year Reich. When the Nazis ultimately fell in 1945, Dark Mirage did not die with them. He fled with a secret contingent of high-ranking Nazis and occultists who escaped through Antarctica, using hidden entrances at the South Pole, controlled by King Froststorm and Winter Inc. They gained access to the inner world. Dark Mirage now resides in Agartha. He has aligned himself loosely with the four queens of the Twisted Forest, though he ultimately serves only his own ancient agenda. He continues his studies of death, power, and resurrection, all while holding the real, still-beating heart of Miqui Deathrone in a heavily guarded sanctum. Deep within an obsidian tower in the Twisted Forest, Dark Mirage sat upon a throne of bone and black crystal. The real heart of Deathrone floated before him in a sphere of dark energy, pulsing steadily. A magical message from the surface reached him, Hermal Zudin's urgent call for aid. "The Aztec has returned, he comes for me." Dark Mirage listened to the message in silence for a moment. Then he threw his head back and laughed, a deep, cruel, ancient sound that echoed through the chamber. He reached out and gently touched the floating heart with a clawed finger. It beat faster, as if recognizing its true owner was coming. "Oh, Hermal," Mirage whispered with dark amusement, "you always were a fool with trophies." He leaned back on his throne, eyes glowing with malicious delight. "Let him come. Let the dead man crawl all the way to New Orleans. When he finds you and realizes the heart you hold is fake," Dark Mirage smiled wide, revealing sharpened teeth. "I will be watching." Yes, now we can finally get to discuss Deathrone. His real name was Miqui, which means dead person / or corpse. In the old Aztec language, Miqui was a brave warrior who grew disgusted with the endless cycle of human sacrifice. He started a rebellion to stop the practice, but it failed. He was captured and sentenced to be sacrificed by Dark Mirage and Hermal Zudin. During the ritual, his heart was ripped out, but Miqui refused to die. His heart kept beating in the priest's hand while he continued struggling. Shocked by this, Dark Mirage and Hermal watched as a fiery portal to hell opened. Two glowing green hands reached through, grabbed Miqui, and pulled him into the underworld before the portal closed. The Green Angel had been watching him. He saw Miqui's righteousness and bravery and chose him as a champion for Lucifer's cause against Yahweh. In hell, the Green Angel personally trained Miqui for centuries. He was reborn and renamed Deathrone, an immortal Aztec warrior fueled by vengeance. He is an extremely skilled warrior with Aztec combat techniques and modern weapons. He is functionally immortal, and he can regenerate from almost any injury. His still-beating heart was kept by Dark Mirage, who gave Hermal a fake one. Deathrone can only truly die if his real heart is destroyed. Deathrone has now been released from hell in the modern era. His primary objectives are to hunt down and destroy Dark Mirage, the immortal evil sorcerer who orchestrated his sacrifice, and retrieve his original heart. Fight against Yahweh's forces on Earth, including the Abrahamic Axis and other agents. A fiery green portal ripped open in the dense forests of Idaho. Out stepped Deathrone, tall, heavily muscled, covered in traditional Aztec warrior tattoos mixed with demonic underworld markings. His eyes glowed with ancient rage. He wore a mix of hell armor and modern tactical gear. His chest held an empty cavity where his heart once beat. He took a deep breath of surface air and grinned like a predator. Time to collect what's mine. Deathrone began walking. He had no phone, no money, no ID, just centuries of training and pure hatred. His first stop was a small gas station off a remote highway. The clerk inside nearly shit himself when a man dressed as an Aztec demon warrior walked in. Deathrone grabbed a map, some beef jerky, and a bottle of water. When the terrified clerk asked for payment, Deathrone simply stared at him until the man handed over the items for free. As he stepped outside, he noticed something strange, a group of mutated humans causing chaos in the parking lot. One had tentacles for arms, another kept accidentally setting himself on fire, clearly victims of Jekyll juice. Deathrone watched them for a moment, then muttered, "Surface world has gone soft and stupid." He effortlessly dismantled the mutants, breaking bones and knocking them unconscious without breaking a sweat. One of the survivors whimpered, "Who the hell are you, man?" "A bringer of death," he replied coldly. "Tell your friends the old gods are waking up." He took the man's truck and continued toward the nearest city, using the radio to learn about the modern world. He heard mentions of Captain Tougharm's recent death, the fall of the man-made angels, and the rise of gangs like the mass murder mafia. None of it mattered to him. He was here for one thing: to kill Hermal Zudin, the sorcerer who had helped rip out his heart centuries ago. By nightfall, Deathrone reached a rundown bar on the edge of a city. He walked in, still covered in dust and dried mutant blood. The bar went silent. He sat down and asked the bartender one question: "Where can I find a very old European wizard dressed as an Egyptian who calls himself Hermal Zudin?" The bartender laughed nervously. "Never heard of him, buddy." A man in the corner, one of Frankie Anctor's low-level mass murder mafia enforcers, recognized the description. He quietly texted his boss. Deathrone noticed. He walked over, grabbed the man by the throat, and lifted him off the ground with one hand. "You know something?" The gangster gasped. I heard rumors. Some old guy matching that description has been seen in New Orleans, deals in dark magic, works with weird cults." Deathrone dropped him and smiled for the first time. "Good." As he walked out of the bar, sirens could be heard in the distance. Someone had called the cops, or maybe the Holy Warriors had already caught wind of a new player in town. Deathrone disappeared into the night, stealing another vehicle and heading south. His first day on Earth was over. He had drawn first blood, gathered his first laid, and made it very clear the immortal Aztec who refused to die had returned, and he was coming for his heart. Deathrone drove the stolen truck south through the night, the desert landscape blurring past him. His mind was focused on one goal: finding Hermal Zudin and ripping his real heart out of whatever chest it currently resided in. He was halfway through New Mexico when trouble found him. A sleek black motorcycle roared up beside the truck. Riding it was a woman in a striking black and white suit, split down the middle like a yin-yang symbol. Her mask was half black, half white. She moved with the confidence of someone who got paid well to hurt people. Her name is Nemesister. She had been hired by the mass murder mafia after one of their low-level guys in the bar sent a panic text. Frankie Anctor didn't like the idea of some freak wandering through his growing territory asking questions about old wizards. Nemesister pulled alongside the driver's window and grinned. "Hey big guy, word is you're looking for some dusty old white Egyptian. My boss says you're bad for business. Pull over and let's talk about it." Deathrone didn't even look at her, he just kept driving. Nemesister took that as a challenge. She swerved in front of the truck, forcing Deathrone to slam on the brakes. Before the vehicle even stopped, she flipped off the motorcycle, landed on the hood, and smashed through the windshield with a spinning kick. Deathrone stepped out of the wrecked truck, cracking his neck. "You're in my way." Nemesister laughed, twirling a pair of high-tech batons that crackled with electricity. "That's the idea, handsome. Payday's good." She was good, really good, skilled, fast, acrobatic, and clearly crazy. She danced around Deathrone, landing precise strikes and using the environment to her advantage. For a few moments, she actually made him work for ITB, but she wasn't on his level. Deathrone caught one of her batons mid-swing, ripped it from her hands, and used it to brutally beat her down. He didn't hold back. Bones cracked. Blood sprayed. He slammed her into the side of the truck, then drove her into the asphalt with a devastating elbow drop. Nemesister lay on the ground, coughing blood, barely conscious. Deathrone stood over her, breathing steady. "I have no quarrel with you, woman, but if you come after me again, I will not be so gentle." He leaned down close to her broken form and whispered, "Tell your mass murder mafia Hermal Zudin belongs to me." Nemesister managed a weak, bloody smile. "Worth a shot." Deathrone left her there alive, broken but breathing. He stole her motorcycle and continued south toward New Orleans. Unbeknownst to him, Hermal Zudin had already received word. Somewhere in the swamps of Louisiana, the ancient sorcerer narrowed his eyes and smiled with dark interest. An Aztec who refuses to stay dead. How fascinating! Deathrone tore across the American Southwest on the stolen motorcycle, the wind whipping against his health armor-adorned body. He was getting closer. He could feel it in his empty chest cavity. Somewhere in the swamps of Louisiana, the ancient sorcerer Hermal Zudin had been alerted. The old wizard did not appreciate uninvited guests asking about him, especially not an undead Aztec who should have stayed dead for centuries. So he sent one of his most trusted and dangerous servants, Pharaoh Isistrix. She intercepted Deathrone on a lonely desert highway just before dawn. Road was empty except for the two of them. Isistrix stood in the middle of the asphalt like a queen, wearing a sleek black and gold bodysuit with a pharaoh-style headdress and a half-mask. Multicolored crystals floated around her, pulsing with magical energy. She looked like a living monument to ancient Egypt mixed with something far darker. "Aztec," she called out, her voice echoing with power. "My master sends his regards and his warning. Turn back, or I will bury you in the sand." Deathrone slowed the motorcycle to a stop and stepped off. He rolled his shoulders and cracked his neck. "I've been buried before, didn't take." The fight was immediate and brutal. Isistrix was no ordinary thug. She was a highly skilled sorceress. She unleashed waves of crystalline energy, summoned sandstorms from nothing, and fired searing beams of light from the floating crystals. For several intense minutes, she actually held her own, blasting Deathrone back, cutting him, and trapping him in bindings of solid light. But Deathrone was built different. He powered through her magic like a freight train. He shattered her crystalline constructs with raw strength, closed the distance through the sandstorm, and began beating her with merciless efficiency. Every punch carried centuries of pent-up rage. He broke her arm, cracked her ribs, and slammed her into the pavement hard enough to leave a crater. Isistrix tried one final desperate spell, a swirling vortex of dark energy, but Deathrone walked straight through it, grabbed her by the throat, and lifted her off the ground. He squeezed. "Where is Hermal?" Isistrix gasped, blood trickling from her lips, but still tried to resist. Deathrone slammed her against the motorcycle and pressed his forearm across her throat. "I will ask one more time," he growled, his voice low and terrifying. "Where is the sorcerer who took my heart?" Isistrix finally broke. "New Orleans," she wheezed. "The old French quarter beneath the abandoned cathedral on Chartres Street. He's waiting for you." Deathrone stared into her eyes for a long moment, judging whether she was lying. Satisfied, he dropped her to the ground. "You live today because you were useful," he said coldly. "If I find out you warned him, I will come back for you." He mounted the motorcycle and roared off into the rising sun, leaving Isistrix broken and bleeding on the side of the desert road. Hermal Zudin's location was finally his and Deathrone was coming. Deep beneath an abandoned cathedral in New Orleans, French Quarter, Hermal Zudin sat in a chamber lit only by floating orbs of violet flame. Ancient Egyptian relics mixed with Aztec artifacts and modern occult technology filled the room. The air smelled of incense, ozone, and old blood. The immortal sorcerer stared at the object floating inside a crystalline orb before him, a still-beating heart, suspended in enchanted liquid. It pulsed with a powerful, stubborn rhythm. Hermal smiled with genuine admiration. "Even after all these centuries, you still refuse to die, Miqui." He remembered that day in the Aztec temple like it was yesterday. The rebellion leader brought before the altar, the knife going in, the heart torn free, and yet the man kept fighting. The portal, the glowing green hands, the sheer defiance in Miqui's eyes as he was dragged into hell. Hermal had kept what he believed was the warrior's heart, a trophy of immense power. He had used it many times over the centuries to fuel his darkest spells. It had never weakened, not once. He reached out with long, pale fingers and gently touched the crystal. The heart pulsed faster, as if sensing an old enemy approaching. A faint magical chime echoed through the chamber. Hermal waved his hand, attempting to send a message across the veil to his old ally. "Be Dark Mirage, the Aztec has returned. The one whose heart I hold. He comes for me. I may require your assistance." There was no response. Hermal waited. Still nothing. He frowned. Typical. The immortal murderer is probably off somewhere, enjoying another flood or massacre. Before he could attempt the message again, the heavy iron doors at the far end of the chamber exploded inward with terrifying force. Deathrone stepped through the smoke and debris, his silhouette framed by the green flames still licking at the broken doorway. His eyes burned with centuries of hatred as they locked onto the sorcerer. Hermal slowly rose from his throne, a dark smile spreading across his ancient face. Well, well. Well, the sorcerer said, his voice smooth and amused. Miqui, I must admit, I didn't expect you to crawl out of hell quite so soon, or at all. Deathrone said nothing. He simply began walking forward, heavy footsteps echoing through the chamber, his gaze never leaving Hermal or the glowing heart floating beside him. Hermal chuckled softly, raising his hands as dark magic began to swirl around him. Come then, my old sacrifice. Let us see if you're still as entertaining as you were the day I ripped your heart out. The underground chamber beneath the abandoned cathedral trembled as Deathrone and Hermal Zuden finally clashed. Hermal moved like living shadow and starlight, hurling devastating spells, torrents of black fire, chains of binding light, and razor-sharp crystal shards summoned from thin air. The ancient sorcerer was no weakling. He had survived millennia by being smarter and crueler than his enemies. But Deathrone was rage incarnate. He charged through every spell like a force of nature. Hermal's black fire burned his skin, yet he didn't slow. Crystal shards cut deep gashes across his chest and arms, but the immortal Aztec kept coming. With every brutal punch and devastating kick, he drove Hermal back, shattering ancient pillars and cracking the chamber walls. You took everything from me, Deathrone roared, grabbing Hermal by the throat and slamming him into a stone altar. Hermal laughed through bloodied teeth, even as Deathrone beat him mercilessly. You were such a promising sacrifice, the sorcerer hissed. Look at you now, still chasing a heart you'll never truly hold again. In a final, desperate move, Hermal unleashed everything he had, a swirling vortex of void energy that threatened to tear the chamber apart. Deathrone roared and punched straight through the heart of the spell, shattering it. He grabbed Hermal by the head with both hands and slammed him into the ground with enough force to crack the floor. The fight was over. Deathrone stood over the broken sorcerer, breathing heavily, blood dripping from his wounds. He reached out and seized the floating crystal orb containing the heart. At last, he crushed the orb in his fist and pulled the still-beating heart free, only to feel something wrong. It was cold, weak, artificial, a fake. Rage like nothing he had felt in centuries exploded through Deathrone. He let out a primal scream that shook the entire cathedral above them. Where is my heart? Hermal, barely conscious and coughing blood, laughed weakly. I guess I never had the real one. Dark Mirage must have kept it. That fool always was smarter than me. He went south Antarctica after the war. That is all I know. Before Deathrone could rip him apart, Hermal activated an emergency teleportation sigil hidden beneath his robes. In a flash of sickly green light, the ancient sorcerer vanished, escaping into the night. Deathrone stood alone in the destroyed chamber, clutching the useless fake heart. His chest cavity, the empty hole where his real heart belonged, burned with fury. He crushed the fake heart into paste and let it fall to the ground. Then, with deadly calm, he turned his gaze south. Antarctica. The South Pole, where Dark Mirage waited. Deathrone didn't know what dangers waited for him or what forces would block his way. He didn't care. He would tear the entire frozen continent apart if he had to. His hunt was far from over.